Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. It's Saturday afternoon. I'll drop this episode Monday morning, but yesterday afternoon I went to a funeral for my friend Bill Krisher, who happens to be a great college football player who also played in the pros and was a personal friend and has some cards, so he is up on my card wall. But thank you, sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, Compsy.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. I really try to go to funerals for my friends. Seemed like a lot of funerals lately, but this was yesterday afternoon. Diane and I set aside the time and went. About 200 people there. He was almost 90, so older than me, but I've known him for 30 years probably, maybe a little more. But I was thinking it's the first funeral I've attended of a guy that was on my card wall. And there's an asterisk on that because I did go to Mickey Mantle's funeral, and that was about 2 blocks away. I was in a standing room in the back, but that was before I had my card wall. Actually, before there was BGS grading, that was in the 90s. And then also Mark Harwell. I obviously went to his funeral, close friend, business associate, great contributor to our company's success. But he wasn't on the wall when I went to his funeral because the card I have on there is his summer tribute card put out that I've gotten slapped and put up there. So not including those, that was the first funeral I've gone to of a guy on my card wall. Okay, so I'm there. I'm looking around. There's 200 people there. And there are 4 football-related guys there at this 200-person funeral that are also on my card wall, plus a 5th who will go on the wall as soon as I can find his only very rare card. I don't think this will be the last funeral for a member of my card wall that I will attend, but as I said, it's the first one and it's notable. I've had a good friendship with Bill. He always had a twinkle in his eye, was always a great man of service. He really was looking how he could help people. He'd been a widower when I met him, and he remarried a wonderful widow 23 years ago. I knew and respected both of them. I thought they were a great match. And I heartily approved, and it was delightful to see them get married at that season in their life. And we saw her at the funeral. She's doing okay, but she's now lost 2 husbands. One of my occasional employee interview questions, we did have a sports company, but we were dealing with a lot of sports stuff. And I always, especially men and women, if they played a sport, first of all, was it a team sport? Was it a sport that had a lot of practice? Was it grueling? But also I'd ask, what position did you play in your sport? I think that sometimes can say a lot about the person. If they're a quarterback or if they're a lineman or if they're a shooting guard or a 3-and-D or a defenseman in hockey, striker in soccer as opposed to a goalie. So it says something about you. Bill was an interior lineman, one of the best ever at Oklahoma. You could look him up. He's in the Oklahoma University Hall of Fame. He's not in the NFL Hall of Fame. He didn't have a long NFL and AFL career, but 2 national championships at Oklahoma in the mid-50s there, mid-late 50s, 47 straight wins, and he was a big part of that. So he was one of the key players in that. But being an interior lineman and playing both ways, which Travis Hunter's not the only one to do, it's coming back. But it's completely different when you're an interior lineman. On offense, you're clearing the way, you're blocking, you're sustaining your blocks to have a path for somebody else to get the glory on offense. So that's the kind of guy Bill was. On the other hand, when he's on defense, I told Diana, I think he was kind of like Randy White, the manster. He just would be in the middle there and shedding blockers, throwing them off to try to make the tackle or make the way for somebody else. So All-American a couple of years, drafted by the Steelers, played for the Dallas Texans, great player. But he never talked about his personal accomplishments. One of the reasons he liked me, I think, is because I kind of knew the backstory. Through cards, I either knew some of the people or knew their stories because of being a longtime sports fan. Now, he's older than me, but when he would struggle for a name of a teammate, sometimes I could figure out who it was, and that was a kick. But he really just mainly talked about the team accomplishments. Now, I could look up, because I never saw him play because I was too little, but he'd always talk about the team accomplishments and how great his teammates were, and they were, but he was one of the top guys on the team. So at the service, you find out things when you go to a funeral. Again, this is a guy on my card wall who has had several distinguished careers. His youngest son, who's not so young, mentioned that Bill's sister, I think after his parents had passed, brought over like a suitcase or a file box of all Bill's press clippings from high school, college, pro, all of his football stuff. And Bill's sons and grandchildren were amazed as they unpacked this because Bill had been so modest, so understated all those years. And when the younger son asked him, why didn't you read that stuff? Or when you know about that stuff, he said, I never read this stuff because I didn't want to get a big head. I just wanted to be the best I could be. What a great attitude. I think it'd be hard when you're being written up not to at least read it, especially in those days when the press was generally very positive. Most people know I love autographs. I'm more of a card collector, but a long time ago, I got a lot of autographed rookie cards before it was in vogue. And I have all of Bill's cards, all the Bill Krisher cards. There's not that many, but I have all of them. I never asked him to autograph them. And I guess I'm looking back and thinking that when you know the person, that's better. When people ask me if you met players, I've met players. There's meeting them, there's maybe getting them to sign an autograph, but there's having dinner with the guy, knowing him in a more personal way. And I had that with Bill. Death is inevitable on this earth. No one lives here forever. It's a circle of life, and it's intended to make us appreciate life. Not just how long you live, that matters, but maybe it matters more how you live and how you die, with honor and with dignity, with respect. Who you live for, what you die for, who you die for, all those things factor into it. Again, an exemplary guy. On the other hand, he had dementia at the end, and I think that's a merciful way to end life. There's no good way to die. A lot of hospice, like with my parents, is trying to manage the pain, but when there's dementia there, it seems to be less traumatic for the person. It's still really difficult for the loved ones who are watching the decline. So very melancholy afternoon, although the service was uplifting. Great to be at the reception and see all these other people on the wall and say hi to most of them, and then reconnect with some people that sometimes you see people at funerals, and even though it's melancholy, it's nice to remember a life well lived. Okay, so driving home with Diane, and we pull up, and on the street, on the curb, in plain view, is a box, which I knew was from Panini, and I thought it was signature required. It was not. There was no signature required. And so it's in plain view of the package pirates who could have driven by. We're not on a hugely busy street, but they're in this plain brown box standing up. And I think, this is terrible. But at least the box was there. I don't know what's in there, except that they'll send me a couple of boxes, and that's much appreciated. So inside is a 2024 Panini NFL 1-in-1 and a 2024 Panini NBA 1-in-1. So two great boxes. Even though there's only two cards in the box, they're in mag touches. It'd be easy for somebody to just jog on off with it. And usually in that situation, the NBA is better than the NFL, but my NFL box won the value war. In spite of, if I tell you that I didn't get a quarterback in my NFL box, that's a bad thing, but I did okay. And the NBA, you're not really looking for a position. Maybe you're looking for a big rookie card, but in the 2024-25 year, there's not huge rookies at this point. So I think the football actually won. And ironically, having just been to what was not an official card wall event, but with all these other card wall members there were no cards in the Panini box that I opened up that were wall worthy, that are going to bump off my friend Bill. I don't think Bill's ever going to get bumped off. He had the football cred and was just a wonderful friend and a great guy. Just another evidence that I do not get loaded boxes, and they do not send me first off the line, which I don't even want, because I want to have a representative product. I want to experience the hobby the way the average Joe collector does. That's the reason I'm in the dollar boxes. I'm not looking to be a super high-end collector. Nobody dislikes high-end stuff, but I'm hobbying the way I want to hobby. I've gotten loaded boxes before, so I know what that's like. And it's, wow, until you get the second one from a company. This is back in the early 90s. After a while, you figured out, but it's not representative. Panini as a company, they're not dead. They're not on life support. They're just entering a new season of creativity. I've seen mentioned many times and heard mentioned that they have extra swatches, extra patches, extra sticker autographs, and they probably do. And I haven't talked to them about it, except that's not unreasonable to think that they had a surplus, that now as their license is waning, that they not have a fire sale. And again, I think the criticism of them is unwarranted. They're still a company that has obligations to their stakeholders, and some of the stakeholders are us guys, us collectors. I would not expect them to do something that's damaging to the industry at large. For example, having like a fire sale and selling off this stuff or dumping this stuff. And so to creatively package these materials, these attributes, is the best way to preserve their brand and preserve the hobby that they love. All the people I know that love the hobby as well. Panini's still going to be around. They're just going to have to evolve. But their pricing model is something that they've established. You either price based on the cost that it costs to produce something plus, or you look at what the traffic will bear. It's generally a higher price if you figure, well, if people will pay $5, if it costs you $1 to produce it, you could sell it for $2 and still make money. But if people are expecting to pay $5, then, again, it's just philosophical. But usually when a company does one or the other of those, they stay with that as part of their brand identity, their marketing identity. But further, Panini, and maybe Topps and Upper Deck, same thing, their pricing seems to be based on the best card you could get. And just coming out of a funeral, I'm thinking maybe a worst case scenario needs to be reflected in terms of a floor price, is that perhaps the pricing needs to be based on the minimum value you could get, say 50%. If it's a $200 box, then it'd be great to be able to say, look, you really would expect to get at least $100 worth of value. And you might get $1,000, and it averages out to some degree, but most people get less. And that's what the repackers are doing. So tonight, I'm also on this same theme. I'm going to a special remembrance dinner. Diane and I and the kids are going to for a dear family friend who's having kind of a special remembrance dinner for his extended family and close friends. And that's going to be bittersweet. He was older than me, and he was a great friend of the family. Then tomorrow we'll be in church, and there'll be an obvious elephant in the room. Don't even need to say what it is, but card collecting is a brief sanctuary from the cares of the world, and our world has cares. It has problems. And so I'm hoping that when all these things happen that are bad, good things come out of it. And then Monday night, just to finish the theme, and this was all scheduled well in advance, is that I have, not every year, but a lot of years, I've had a medical survivors dinner, which is based on my kind of near-death experience back in 96. So I invite other men who've had near-death experiences or heart attacks or cancers, lung transplants. One guy had a horrific car wreck, but everybody has to have had really be getting a second chance that probably should be dead. And so usually it's about 15 guys. And Chuck, our family friend, came to the last one, and he has now passed away. And there are other men that have come to previous dinners that have passed away. But it's an opportunity, as I said, to celebrate life. We'll maybe spend a little time acknowledging people that are not there. But when you're getting a second chance at life, or you're getting extended years, whatever you have, make the most of it and consider how you live and who you live for and what you live for. And this hobby can be a big part of it, but it probably should not be the most important thing. Again, thank you, Bill Krisher, for a life well lived. Same thing with Chuck and my other friends. Been to a lot of funerals and done a lot of tributes here, and it's just difficult to say goodbye to somebody you saw a lot. He's in a better place. He's got no more pain, and he's got perfect memory now, so there's no more dementia. So anyway, thanks, everybody.